All right, so up to this point, we focused on West Africa and the trans-Saharan trade routes. So we've seen how Ghana and Mali really became wealthy by controlling the exchange of gold, salt, and other goods across the Sahara. So now we're going to shift our attention to East Africa and the Indian Ocean trade network. So it's also one of the most important systems of exchange in world history. So instead of the camel caravans crossing the deserts, now merchants use ships and seasonal wind patterns to really connect Africa with Arabia, India, Southeast Asia, and even China. So this slide is really the bridge between topic 1.5 and 2.3. So the Swahili city states developed along East African coast, the East African coast, excuse me, in locations with very excellent natural harbors. So cities such as Kilwa and Zanzibar, to name a few, really became important trading centers because they connected inland Africa resources to the larger Indian Ocean world. So, one of the most important environmental factors was the monsoon wind system. So, merchants learned to use these predictable seasonal winds to sail across the Indian Ocean and return home at the right time each year. So without those monsoon winds, the Indian Ocean trade would have been much more difficult. Socially, these cities became highly urbanized and cosmopolitan. So merchants from Arabia, Persia, India, and East Africa interacted regularly due to the Indian Ocean trade. So over time, due to these different people interacting a lot, their culture started to blend, which ultimately created a very unique Swahili culture. So the Swahili language itself demonstrates a very example of cultural diffusion. So it is built on Bantu linguistic roots, but it incorporates many Arabic influences. So that makes it one of the best examples of cultural blending in this course. So politically, so that's the P in pieces, the city states remained independent rather than unified. So each was ruled by its own sultan or merchant elite, and their power depended largely on trade and commercial success. So for just AP purposes and AP exam takeaways, so just remember Swahili city states equal Indian Ocean trade plus monsoon winds that help that trade become actual and from have to happen, and cultural blending due to the trade. So take a moment to think about what these trading cities actually looked like. So these were not isolated African villages. They were wealthy port cities connected to one of the largest trading networks in the world. So merchants arriving in Kilwa or Mombasa might encounter African goods, Arabian traders, Indian textiles, Chinese porcelain, Islamic architecture, and multiple languages, all in the same marketplace. So these cities really served as true crossroads of the Afro Eurasian commerce and culture. All right, so looking at the economics, cultural, and innovations of the Swahili city states. So economically, the Swahili city states became wealthy by participating in maritime trade. So remember, I told you anytime you see something with marine time, think about ocean. They exported gold, ivory, timber, iron, and enslaved people, while importing Chinese porcelain, Indian textiles, spices, glassware, and luxury goods from across Afro-Eurasia. So the city states collected taxes and port fees on merchants, allowing those rulers to accumulate a lot of wealth, and they would use that wealth to fund different urban projects they were working on in their city states. So cities like Kilwa became incredibly prosperous because they sat at important points within the trade network. Culturally, Islam spread through trade rather than conquest. So merchant elites adopted Islam because it connected them to the broader world of the Indian Ocean. However, though, local African traditions really remained important. So creating a unique blend of African and Islamic cultures. So this is also where we start seeing the rise of the diasporic communities. So merchants from Arabia, Persia, India, and China settled in these foreign ports while maintaining some kind of connection to their homeland. So these communities acted as cultural bridges. So they helped spread language, religion, technology, and ideas throughout the Indian Ocean. So innovation wise, excuse me, Indian Ocean trade depended on major innovations. Sailors used dhows with Latin sails to take advantage of the monsoon winds, and the dhows are pictured up in the right over here in the slide. So navigation improved through the use of these magnetic compasses and astrolabes. Remember we talked about those things being really big in the starting in Sun China, Dar Islam, and all of that. Larger ships, such as those Chinese junk ships we talked about in Song China, could transport huge quantities of cargo across vast distances as well. So to summarize, topics 1.5, 2.3, and 2.4, because I know there's a lot of information, you all. Thank y'all for bearing with me in these videos. But to summarize everything together, West African states such as Ghana and Mali grew wealthy through the Trans-Saharan Trade Network and the Golden Salt Trade. Mansa Musa demonstrated the power of wealth of Mali while helping connect West Africa to the larger Islamic world. On the East African coast, Swahili city-states became wealthy through their participation in the Indian Ocean trade. Trade spread not only goods, but also religion, technology, languages, and ideas. So Islam spread throughout both West Africa and East Africa, while cultural blending really produced unique societies such as the Swahili city states. But most importantly, is just remember Africa was not isolated. It was a part of the greater world and the trade networks to be. So camel saddles, if you ever see any of that in your LEQ, DBQs, MCQs, camel saddles equals trans-Saharan trade. Mali, the Kingdom of Mali equals gold, salt trade, Mansa Musa, Timbuktu. These Swahili city states equal monsoon winds, Indian Ocean trade, and the diasporic communities equal cultural exchange. All right, we're done with the videos now for this topic.